Hello and welcome. I am Captain Tom. I am joined by my co-host Wilson over there. Intergalactic Robot doesn't get a mic. And yeah, welcome to Silverwind Stories Bible Edition. So the format for this show comparative to the other one that I do on Fridays is it's going to be a little bit more simplified. So we're not going to have a segment at the end where Wilson tries to earn your like and subscribe. It takes a little bit of time to set up. And I want to make sure that we can do this consistently every Wednesday and then continue to invest the time to make those Friday shows when they're available. So yeah, we are going to be going through a very long story and going to try and, stay as true to it as possible, reading directly from the book itself and then talking about it, explaining things. And by all means, it's a live show. If you have any questions, have any thoughts, interests of any kind, just let me know in the chat and we'll talk about it when it makes sense to take a break from the reading and discuss those ideas. So with that, we're gonna go ahead and for this show, there we go, we will typically stay within the solar system just to kind of simplify things a little bit. And today is gonna be a little bit of an exception because we are gonna be talking about Genesis chapter 1, and I figure it would be appropriate for us to go out to the edge of the galaxy and do the show from there. So we're going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to go take this down and let's make that happen here. All right, so we've got Wilson, could you fire up the engines for me? All right, I think we go. Perfect. All right, so yeah, as we mosey on over there, let's see here. Anything else we need to cover before we get into this? Oh yeah, might as well tell you guys this. There are a few different translations, to say the least. There we go. So we've got the New Living Translation, which will be the one I'm going to primarily read out of, and that's basically going to be it because, oh, here we go. Let's take this. Got to make sure Wilson knows what he's doing here. All right. And that should do it. Okay. So yeah, so there's a bunch of different translations, a lot of really good ones. But here's the thing about translating a really old text that there's a lot of old Hebrew or even Greek, and it's that not everything necessarily transfers word for word very well. There are some translations that try to stick very close to that, and those are really good for doing studies, especially on the language of the things that you're looking at. And then there are other texts that try to summarize or essentially try to translate the thought that's being expressed and in the context that it's trying to express it to the best of their ability. And then some try to do a little bit balancing of both. So the NLT kind of leans towards trying to make it understandable and translating the thought that's in the text. So if you're trying to do a deep dive into the actual words and that sort of thing, you got to go look at a different translation. But yeah, I think it's a good baseline, and it's something that it'll be simple for us in a storytelling manner to be able to get the story out there, and you actually can understand the reading, right? So there's a King James version. I've heard some people are really committed to that, but at the end of the day, most people aren't going to know what you're reading when you say it. So I want you guys to understand the reading, and that's where we're going to go with this one. And it's one I've used quite a bit, so I feel pretty good about it. So with that, let's go ahead and actually jump over to the reading room so you guys can actually see, because you can't see the edge of the galaxy right here. We went out and it's going to be behind us. So just some guy, thanks for joining. Let's go ahead and go on back there to the reading room. All right, so here we are. We've got a nice view of it right here, I would say. It's pretty cool. Yeah, so we'll do the story from here and have some fun with it. So I probably have a couple of different scenes. We'll go between them, but for the most part, when I'm doing the reading, probably not gonna have it right here on my face. But with that said, let's just dive right into it. Right. So in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And the earth was formless and empty, and the darkness covered the deep waters, and the Spirit of God hovered over the surface of the waters. All right, so I'm going to stop it right there. There's actually quite a bit to break down in just this beginning kind of scene right here. So there are two major, worldviews, right? And a lot of views, can be under either of these, but the two main ones is this. It's a theistic worldview where some non-material force, some non-material being is the one who authored or started some kind of creative process, is the cause for why things are here. And then there is the non-theistic view, commonly referred to as atheistic view, where that is just matter, right? The only thing that's ever existed was the material that the universe is made up of, and there's nothing beyond that, right? And so let's break this down a little bit, because obviously the Bible is not going to assert that non-theistic view. But where does the logic line up with all this? So I know that's going to be typically the first thing when these things are brought up is isn't a theistic view illogical, right? Isn't it unreasonable? Well, let's break down the logic a little bit about cause. And so, if we're talking about where something comes from, like, where did you come from? Other humans, your parents. Okay, well, where did humans come from? That's a little bit bigger of a question, right? Well, if you believe in, a evolutionary or like a materialistic worldview, probably believe in macroevolution, and you probably believe, okay, so people came from monkeys. All right, well, they come from, you go back a series of ways until you get to a single-celled organism. Then it's like, well, where did that come from? Well, you have stars that are condensing matter and creating all the different elements and exploding, and that's what formed the planets. Well, where did all that come from? Well, you eventually, I call this the Russian doll effect. You usually have the Russian doll all the way out to the last piece of, you have all the matter of the universe, probably just existing as electrons and lights and that sort of thing. And I think the other thing is quartz, I think is what it's called. But so all that's just in one spot in the universe before the Big Bang, right? Before it explodes. And so that begs the question, you eventually have to get back to something that doesn't have a beginning, right? So if you have the materialist view, that means that the matter does not have a beginning, which means all that matter in one spot was there for eternity into the past, right? It's been there for quintillions upon quintillions upon quintillions of years, infinitely into the past, at perfect rest in one spot. And that begs the question, logically, why did it explode, right? So if the materialistic view is something that, let me back up and say this. The other view of that is that there's a force outside of that matter, either that matter, if it did exist there forever and ever and ever, something outside of matter, right? Which I guess we could just give it a name, call it something spiritual, which is basically just what that word means. It's a non-material thing. Some other force either did something to spark that creation, or there was no matter that existed forever and ever, just that spiritual force, and matter was something that it created, right? And so with this story with the Bible, we actually get where this is a spiritual force, so God has existed eternity into the past. Something has to not have a beginning, logically, right? Something has to not have a beginning, like once you Russian doll your way all the way out to the end. And he invented matter itself, right? So we're going to see that in the text here, which actually means it does check out pretty well logically, right? You actually have a broken logic when you have matter as a thing that's eternal, because then why would something that's existed for eternity at perfect rest explode for... there would have to be a cause, right? There would have to be a reason. So we have a cause, we have a reason, we have something starting off without a beginning right here in the first chapter of the Bible here. So far, so good. Fairly logical, frame of reference here. So we're going to go ahead and continue. Let's get into a little bit more of the reading. All right, this is verse 2. Then God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. And God saw that the light was good. Then he separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness night. And evening passed, and morning came, marking the first day. All right. So there's a few literary techniques that are used in the Bible in quite a few different places. Different books of the Bible have different kind of literary themes. A lot of things in Genesis are a bit poetic, and you'll also see, so you're going to see a little bit of that. Some nice patterns here in the first chapter. And you're also going to see a lot of repetition. And when something's repeated a lot, it's essentially emphasized. It's like, this is really, really important. You should pay attention to this. And so we're going to see that reference here at the end, that there was evening, and there was morning, and there was a day, right? And so it kind of begs a question too about the concept of a day. So here it's starting off with evening, right? And that's because on the very first day, there was darkness, and then God created light, right? So essentially the day didn't, for this calendar that we're looking at, a little bit different than ours. Our day starts at midnight. Theirs started at sunset, right? So when the sun was finally set and it was dark, that was the beginning of a new day. And then, so it's kind of what's going on here. And then we've got another thing right here where he is creating the concept of light. And it seems like when he first creates it, light is just kind of going everywhere, right? It doesn't seem to have the properties that light follows now, where it follows in a straight path, and then you can have shadows on the other side. And maybe it could bounce around, but it's going to be a little bit dimmer when it gets over there. But here it just kind of goes everywhere. And then God has to invent the concept of light following the rules that we see it following today, so that darkness can exist and so shadows can exist. I mean, night is just a big shadow, us being on the other side of the sun, right? So that's some cool stuff right there. Let's keep it going though. Then God said, "Let there be a space between the waters to separate the waters of the heavens from the waters of the earth." And that is what happened. God made this space to separate the waters of the earth from the waters of the heavens. God called the space sky, and evening passed and morning came, marking the second day. Okay, so this is a little bit of an interesting read right here. And once again, if you follow different versions of the Bible, sometimes they'll use some different verbiage. And one of those is called... Well, right here we got, actually, we're not there yet. I'm thinking a little bit ahead in the text. So we actually got something pretty simple right now. All right. Well, actually, you know what? Yes, I am there. I missed my spot here. And that is what happened. God made this space to separate the waters. So this space is often referred to as the firmament, right? So this is basically the sky, because it later says birds fly in the firmament. The firmament isn't ground. So the picture here is that there is a great body of water, which we would call oceans. And then there's also a great body of water in the sky. And there's quite a bit of conversation about what this could mean. It paints a few different pictures. This could be referring to clouds. And there are weaknesses to that, because we later see in the next chapter that it doesn't immediately start raining on the earth. So everything's being watered by a mist, right? So if there were clouds, you would think there'd be rain. So it may not be referring to that. The other idea is that there is it's being poetic. It's just referring to how God has a vault of water in the heavens, and he makes it rain when he chooses to. So there's that more poetic route to it. And then there's another really interesting one where it's literally a layer of water in the atmosphere, whether that be ice or, it's in mist form or it's solid. I would imagine it'd probably be ice, but there's this dome around the planet. And if that's what it's describing here, that would create an interesting greenhouse effect on the planet. So the oxygen would be pressurized. There'd be a tepid climate through most of the planet. So most of the planet wouldn't really have harsh temperatures. I mean, it's like a greenhouse, right? Everything kind of gets equalized. And a really cool thing about that is that by pressurizing the oxygen, because you got all that water sitting on the air, it would actually, it replicates something that we see in like hyperbaric oxygen therapy. Is they put people in these in hospitals. They'll put people in these tanks that pressurize the oxygen. It helps you heal wounds you wouldn't heal otherwise, and among other things. But basically the human body can actually function, live, and thrive in an environment with pressurized oxygen, which has all kinds of ramifications. So I mean, plants would grow like crazy. The human body would be much stronger, I would imagine. That you'd be able to run for miles without getting tired. I mean, it would literally create a pristine paradise, unlike what we see the world like today. And so there is a point in this story where that is a good place to see where that went away. Just a few chapters in, but for right now, those are kind of the three ideas around the firmament and these two great bodies of water. I lean a little bit more towards the idea that there was a layer of water in the atmosphere, kind of just a direct, translation of what's being said there, and that essentially a worldwide paradise was being created by this. So seems pretty cool. Let's go ahead and jump into the next part here. All right. Then God said, "Let the waters beneath the sky flow together into one place, so dry ground may appear." And that is what happened. God called the dry ground land, and the waters seas, and God saw that it was good. Then God said, "Let the land sprout the vegetation, every sort of seed-bearing plant and trees that grow seed-bearing fruit. These seeds will then produce the kinds of plants and trees from which they came." And that is what happened. The land produced vegetation, all sorts of seed-bearing plants, and trees with seed-bearing fruit. Their seeds produced plants and trees of the same kind, and God saw that it was good. And evening passed, and morning came, marking the third day. Now, that seems pretty simple, right? He created lands and seeded it with vegetation. So there is so far we have light. It's now going to follow the rules of light. I would imagine it's probably coming from, the Spirit of God himself as he's roaming around his creation, creating these night-day cycles, or maybe it's just fixed in one spot, but it hasn't really been given a exact source yet, right? So, we got all these plants here. They're getting light supposedly from this. But let's go ahead and get into the next day here and see exactly what he does with that light source. Then God said, "Let light appear in the sky to separate the day from the night. Let them mark off the seasons, days, and years. Let these lights in the sky shine down on the earth." And that is what happened. God made two great lights, the larger one to govern the day, the smaller one to govern the night. He also made the stars. God set these lights in the sky to light the earth, to govern the day and night, and to separate the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good. And evening passed and morning came, marking the fourth day. All right. I might be getting this backwards here. Hold up. Yeah, here we go. I thought I had transitioned to another scene. Okay, I'll do the explanation from the close view here. Okay, so we've got a couple different things to talk about here. So earlier I was mentioning God created light, created the concept of light, and there's this night-day cycle that keeps happening. It could be that the concept of light was created, but it is saying that there's evening and that there is morning, right? So it sounds like this is just, God is giving light a specific place to go from instead of it necessarily coming from him or just happening, right? I mean, God is essentially able to do anything, right? So if you accept the premise that there's a God big enough to create the stars in a very afterthought statement in here, then he could just essentially do whatever he wants. And the rules that are happening during the creation process are not necessarily the rules that we see, things operating by now, right? So there's, scientific laws that we have now, or really scientific theories that we have now, such as, you can't create or destroy matter, right? It just transforms into something else. Well, God is literally creating matter here. And you've got another interesting thing going on here is where he's creating stars, which are obviously millions and millions of light years away. And that brings up a very good question of, well, then how are we able to see them, right? And this is often brought up when, you hear people have their conversations between one another, like, an atheist and a Christian or having some kind of debate, and this will get brought up. Well, this is actually kind of a problem for everyone. So one of the things that's been discovered about space is that all of space has a basically consistent temperature. That the idea, if there was a big bang and that exploded and extrapolated out, well, you should be able to look at heat patterns in the universe and find where and what direction that big bang came from. And so what you find instead is that everything's kind of equalized out in the universe as far as that we can, find out with all of our instruments and things like that. Well, the problem with that is that the universe is so large that this is called the horizon problem. And it's that, the fastest way to transfer energy, to equalize all the energy out, it'd be like if you have an ice cube in a glass of water. It takes time for that energy to transfer and for all that ice to melt and that the water temperature to stop changing, right? It takes time to transfer energy. Light is going to be the fastest way to transfer energy across the universe, but the universe is so large, light wouldn't be able to bounce across it all the many times it would need to do in order to equalize that temperature. So the way that a lot of I'll say non-theistic science tries to explain this would say that the universe was expanding and then it stopped expanding, reverse direction, so that everything kind of equalized itself out and then expanded again. Which, really messes with a lot of physicists. They don't like that because it kind of breaks physics for that to be a thing. But, it's a problem for everyone. And honestly, it's really not that big of a problem, as I was saying before. From a theistic point of view, if God created stars in the sky and he wanted you to see them, and this is during the creation process, why wouldn't he also create the light between them? It just seems kind of a no-brainer that he would do that. He seems pretty smart to be doing what he's doing so far. So really, I don't really find much of a problem in the text for that. It does get brought up a lot, so I figured I would just cover that a little bit. So and I think that's kind of where we are. And then once again, we keep getting these evening passed and morning came. And it really does seem to be cementing the idea of a 24-hour cycle, right? And you're getting sunlight created the day after plants. So, 24 hours seems good enough for that purpose. Okay. Let's go ahead. I think that's all I really had to say on that part and explain about that. All right, let's go ahead and get into the next part here. All right. Then God said, "Let the waters swarm with fish and other life. Let the skies be filled with birds of every kind." So God created great sea creatures and every living thing that scurries and swarms in the water, and every sort of bird, each producing offspring of the same kind. And God saw that it was good. God blessed them, saying, "Be fruitful and multiply. Let the fish fill the seas, and let the birds multiply on the earth." And evening passed and morning came, marking the fifth day. Okay, so a few things here. So we got fish, we got birds, which is nice. And we also have a comment, and they made this comment earlier about the plants and stuff. When it's talked about things were reproduced by their own kind. So in like reference to a plant, an orange tree is going to produce oranges or something within that kind of plant, right? When you have these fish, right, or these birds, they're going to produce the same kind for themselves. So if there's any part of the text here that really kind of throws a wrench into trying and marry the two concepts of Darwin's theory of evolution and this biblical story, that really creates a lot of friction with that, because it's basically directly saying that things are produced by their own kind and they don't produce anything else. An orange tree does not, have offspring that is an apple tree, right? And we don't really see that happening anyways. That'd be really weird. Like, cats don't give birth to dogs. It's a very simple concept, but it's saying that, things are created separately and they're reproducing through that separation. Now, a kind of animal, and this is good to cover, so what's referring to is not necessarily a species. That's kind of a broader thing. Like cat is a species, but there's several different kinds of cats. There's big cats or small cats, and those are two different kinds of animals. So you've got essentially any animal that is able to reproduce and create a fertile offspring. That is going to be a kind, right? And we've got a good example of this is dogs, right? Dogs were really, the original thing was a wolf, and people bred wolves, and they were able to create all these different types of dogs from one kind of animal, right? And so they can all interbreed with one another, and so they all belong to one kind, and that's essentially what's being talked about here. So and I don't want to jump too far ahead of myself, but in chapter 2 we're going to be dealing a little bit with the first man, Adam. He's being given a job to name animals, and it really wouldn't take that long for him to name them all because, well, there's actually a good number of kind of animals, but it's not like trying to name every single type of animal, right? It's a much simpler job than that. So okay, well, we're not there yet, so let's go ahead, and speaking of human beings, let's get into this next part. Now, I do want to pause a little bit right here and give you a heads up about this chapter and how this is. It's a little bit different than the second chapter in that this is a non-emotional, non-intimate, chronological perspective of creation, right? So chapter 1 is all about God said this, boom, that happened. God said this, boom, that happened. And the whole creative process, it's very unattached and far away view of it. Chapter 2 will kind of take the whole segment we're about to read right now and zoom in and then retell what we're about to read right now and showing the details of it, the intimate details of the creation of human beings. It's not meant to be a chronological perspective of creation or a second creation story. It just meant to be a zoomed in, more detailed approach to that. So let's go ahead and get through chapter 1 though. We'll do chapter 2 next week. So all right, let's get this. Let's go here. Perfect. All right. Then God said, let the earth produce every sort of animal, each producing offspring of the same kind, livestock, small animals that scurry along the ground, and wild animals. And that is what happened. God made all sorts of wild animals, livestock, and small animals, each able to produce offspring of the same kind. And God saw that it was good. Then God said, let us make human beings in our image, to be like us. They will reign over the fish in the sea, the birds in the sky, the livestock, and all the wild animals on the earth, and the small animals that scurry along the ground. So God created human beings in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. All right, so we're going to pause right there. So there's a bit to break down here. Chapter 1 is pretty loaded. So we've got all the animals being produced, very much like the fish in the sea and the birds in the air and that sort of thing. And then, we get people are being created in the image of God. So what does that mean? Now, the first thing I thought of when I first ever heard this, I was thinking, okay, so I guess God has like 2 arms and 2 legs and a head, right? Like that's like an image, almost like an outline of a person. But it's not really referring to, or couldn't possibly be referring to that, because God is a spirit, right? God doesn't necessarily have like a physical body of any kind, which is means he probably doesn't have any kind of image or form like that. And instead, it's referring to his likeness, his character, right? God is loving, God is kind, he's creative, he's merciful, he's good, right? And so he created these human beings in his image. And this is a very unique thing in the creation, right? So in Genesis 1, it doesn't actually cover or say when God created the spiritual creatures, but we know that there are spiritual creatures that God created: angels, cherubim, the heavenly host, right? There's our heavenly council. But it's not really focused on it. This is just focusing on the physical creation. We don't really know when God created those things. But a human being is actually really unique and interesting. And C.S. Lewis had an interesting remark on it in Screw Tape Letters, where he refers to people, or really in Screw Tape Letters, it's a demon referring to people this way, but it's actually C.S. Lewis kind of painting an interesting picture of humanity, and that's that we're neither completely this physical creature like an animal is. We're not completely what an angel is. We are this unique thing in creation that's like has a foot in both worlds. Like an animal, their sole priority is to live, breed, exist, survive. Like their job is to deal with physical things. They live in a physical world and they have physical concerns, and that's what they're built to deal with. And things like angels, spiritual creatures, deal with spiritual things. They have a spiritual mission, they have spiritual purpose. Well, human beings have both a physical and a spiritual purpose. So we're these lowly, little creatures that are very much like an animal, but we also stand apart from those animals. And I think that's a very, very perceptive understanding of people, right? And clearly there's a difference between us and the squirrel outside, right? Something very unique about human beings. So with that, it says he creates them in his likeness, right? So we're getting that purpose. If you ever wondered what's the purpose of humanity, what's the purpose of being a human being? Well, it's to reflect the image of God, right, in his character. And so essentially, and this is another thing, I'll probably refer to C.S. Lewis a lot because I really like C.S. Lewis. But he describes people as well as being little reflections of God all throughout his creation, governing that creation. Right. So this is essentially their purpose is to rule over that physical creation, but to do so from the character that God has. Right. Which is a good character. And then we get some repetition here. So God created human beings in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. And now that is quite the statement because, so there's people will come up with a lot of classifications for people. Throughout history, a lot of times people would classify themselves as, the belonging to a certain nation or tribe or country or that sort of thing. Here's the Athenians over here. Here's the Romans over there. The Samaritans over there, Egyptians. And so people classified themselves and really kind of break people into being all different types of people. But here we have in the first chapter, God is saying that he's made more than one kind of person. He's made only two different types of people. And those two different types of people are male and female. And literally any other type of person that, we could think of is a man-made, concept, right? Something that we create in our own heads. There's no such thing, according to this, right? And this is, for this story, there's no such thing as like, a white person or red person or black person, a yellow person. Like that doesn't exist, right? There is just human beings, men and women. And I don't know, there's something really beautiful about that. So, quite a statement here. There's a lot in chapter 1. It's great. Okay, yeah, let's go ahead and let's finish this up because I think we are basically about to the end of it. So let's go ahead and go through it. Then God blessed them and said, "Be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and govern it. Reign over the fish in the sea, the birds in the sky, and all the animals that scurry along the ground." Then God said, "Look, I have given you every seed-bearing plant throughout the earth, all the fruit trees for your food. And I have given every green plant as food for all the wild animals, the birds in the sky, and the small animals that scurry along the ground, everything that has life." And that is what happened. Then God looked over all he had made, and he saw that it was very good. And evening passed and morning came, marking the sixth day. Okay, right. So we've got, once again, reiterating that part of the purpose for humanity, which is to govern and reign over the physical creation that he created. And so he's basically put all of these under the kingdom of humanity. And this is going to be really important for the story. If something happens to people, then the animals and creation, the physical creation, will also kind of be under that umbrella, whether they are blessed or cursed, right? So we'll go into that more in chapter 2. Actually, I think it probably come up more in chapter 3. But we also have this about the food. Now, it's saying that people are essentially fruit eaters. And the interesting thing is that, even like evolutionary, scientists will say a very similar thing. They'll say, well, people's ancestors were fruit eaters. That's what it looks like we were designed to do. So that's actually a pretty, cool thing that it points out right there. And it's saying that all the green plants are being given to all the other animals, which means that animals aren't eating one another and people aren't eating meat either. So Or will people get malnourished in this type of environment? Well, we'll see. There is definitely some trees that exist at this time that people are eating from that don't exist nowadays, right? And we'll kind of get more into that when we get into that part of the story. But right now, as it stands, and when it says every creature has life in it, there are other texts that talk about has breath, right? So if a creature breathes, which does exclude bugs, right? So bugs, quote unquote, breathe, but not really in the way that that human beings or animals typically will breathe. They like open up parts of their body and air kind of passes through, but they don't really have lungs, right? They don't actually do the act of breathing. So it's not to say that creatures weren't eating bugs and that bugs weren't eating one another and that sort of thing. Like, what's a spider going to eat? Well, other bugs, right? So this is kind of talking about things outside of the bug kingdom. Small animals, big animals, anything that has breath in it is considered to essentially, being very pacifist, not really participating in the food chain and that sort of thing. So it's very much a paradise that has been created here. Things aren't eating one another. Lions aren't dangerous. And it's kind of a beautiful scene. So let's see here. I know we got Julian, right? We got Julian here. Howdy. We'll watch the video later after work. Can't wait to start the series. Heck yeah. I appreciate you stopping by, man. All right, so if we don't have any questions or anything like that, more than welcome to bring in questions in other episodes, but I think this will be a good time to wrap up. So Wilson, you know what, I don't feel like getting up from my chair, honestly. Could you just send us back to Earth from here? I mean, I know I normally have to, if we're gonna warp, but I hit some buttons. Okay, you know what, all right, let's can you do the phasing thing? I really, guys, I've been on my feet all day, and yeah, let's do this. Go. We're just gonna phase back to Earth so we can let you guys off the ship here. I think that should do it. All right, what we got here. Here it is. So yeah. Well, I appreciate you guys joining the show. And you know what? Part of our mission here on the Silverwind is to fight back against the chaos and tell some good stories that are going to, here we go. I think we can lock us into place right here. All right, perfect. Tell some stories that are going to kind of feed into positive culture, bring people together, and just be able to just have a good time. I mean, the way that people have been brought together throughout history is essentially having shared stories, sitting around the bonfire together and sharing that with one another. So we are here to provide that space for all of humanity, and we cannot do it on our own. So if you know any humans at all, right? You gotta share this video to them. You gotta share the channel with them. Let them know about it. Our goal is to get because there's like so many, like 9 billion people or something like that on the planet. Is it 9 or 12 billion? I don't know. We went over it in a previous episode, but we're going to try and aim for a humble 1 billion people on this, and we'll bring them all together. So with that, if you believe in the mission, you can help us out by leaving a comment, like, subscribe, hitting that notification bell, and sharing it with once again all the humans you know. So with that, we are going to go ahead and hit the outro, and I'll catch you guys next time.
I know the air I'm breathing, it's no good for my lungs. I do this every season, I hate when summer comes. I fall into a trap that I made by myself. Oh, and I always do the wrong thing. I'm unstable and I'm unsteady, I've lost a million times already, and I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down. I feel unable and so unworthy, my heart feels heavy, I've lost already, and I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down now. And I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down now. that I made by myself. Oh, and I always do the wrong thing. I'm unstable and I'm unsteady. I've lost a million times already. I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down. I feel unable and so unworthy. My heart feels heavy. I've lost already, and I'm so sorry, but I'm not able to slow down. Now, please help me see the things that I am. I don't understand. I'm doing the best that I can right now, but it's never enough. I'm not even ready.